Hey everyone, Tony Chips here from Chiappetta Shoes. This is Workshop Live. We're talking about feet. Make sure Chiappetta Shoes is your first step when trying to solve foot problems. Today we have an F20 foot type. This is a bridge that's falling, it's collapsing. The arch is just a mess. It's falling down like crazy. We have a custom orthotic. We had started with just a metatarsal pad. This lady's had it for about a year. She had a double knee replacement, and she's not getting enough support. She said that things are okay. She hasn't come back for quite a long time because she just thought it could be what it was, but we can make it better. So in this case, F20 foot type, there's a lot of flexibility, and construction-wise, when we look at the type of orthotic that we have, it's one of our common constructions. We have 2 layers of cushion, right around 4.5 millimeters of thickness. We have a THK base layer and then a thick cork underneath that. What we're going to start with today is a medial wedge. I want to use a material that's a combination of a cork. It's called multi-cork, common for custom orthotics. And with what we have here as the base layer, this is a 55 durometer. Now, if I want to elevate and push up properly, I'm going to actually use a 65 durometer addition or modification, just so it translates up into the foot properly. We're also, because the foot abducts or turns to the outside a whole lot, we're also going to put a 4-foot wedge on here. We're going to do a lateral wedge, and the idea is to keep the foot, so her foot, when she's taking a step, she's rear foot's turning in a lot, arch is dropping down, and the forefoot's abducting or turning to the outside a whole lot. What we're trying to do is steer her in a more even direction. The double knee replacement went well. Mobility, range of motion is actually in pretty good shape, and she hasn't come to see me in about a year since she got these. So we are trying to get these cleaned up as best as possible. And we got a 2-stepper when it comes to the modification work. We're going to get this rear foot medial wedge set up. Then we're also going to do a 4-foot lateral wedge. And the idea is to get her moving off that first metatarsal and big toe in a more even and straight line. I think that's also going to help the knees, the hips, overall balance and posture. So, for the 4-foot lateral wedge, I like using a material from Acor. They're one of our preferred providers of material. And with them, we've got EVA FM. It's about a 70 durometer EVA. It's not a crepe rubber. A lot of times we'll use different crepe rubbers for the core component of an orthotic. But when it comes to this 4-foot modification, we're going to use, it's about a 2 millimeter thickness. You know, with any of these companies that we work with, there's a lot of times a bit of variance when we are looking at ordering the materials up. And so the 4-foot is, we're going with a 70 durometer EVA. And when we do this kind of work, you know, you got to think about the levels of hardness and what we're trying to accomplish. The 4-foot takes a lot of weight. As you're going heel to toe, you're steering a lot of that body weight through the midfoot, through the toe off. And that can be the wobbly stage of your gait. So when we talk about, you know, the types of material we're using, you got to always keep in mind what you're trying to accomplish and how supportive we're doing. So yeah. All right. So we got a 2-step situation. We're going to do the 4-foot first and the rear foot. And then the second phase, we're going to put a metatarsal support on here as well. So that's 1 and 2. Now, this EVA FM stuff works really well. They have it in a couple different colors. I think black and white are the main ones. Acor is a great company that we like to work with, and when we talk about this type of material. This material, EVA FM, has a propensity to shrink a fair amount. So when we put it in the oven, I got a fourth camera that we got. We're going to be setting that up probably tomorrow. So we'll have our workshop set up nice and nice real quick. So we got 3 different pieces: medial rear foot wedge, lateral forefoot wedge, metatarsal support. I know I said it in the last one. I like the T-form Met Pad by Pet Egg or Taco. These things work great. It's an awesome template. I like using this, and just a really good setup to it. So we're gonna start with the 65 durometer cork. Give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. I'm gonna throw it in the oven. All right, we're back. So I got the EVA FM in the oven right now. Gotta be careful, that stuff can burn. We heated up the 65 durometer multi-cork. And again, I like making sure that you have your bases covered when it comes to, that's hot, when it comes to giving the right support level from underneath. You gotta make sure that whatever you're adding is translating up into the foot properly. You want to get it on before it cools too much, because then you got to reheat it. And with this, sometimes we'll do a medial wedge where we just have at the base. Sometimes we want to wrap up. There's going to be some finishing parts to this process that we have a dropped navicular as well. Like I said before, the bridge has fallen, and we want to support the body and the foot but not create too many hot spots. I'm going to go get that EVA FM real quick in 2 seconds. This can be nasty if you leave it in the oven. Fredo's had a few times where he accidentally leaves it in the oven. And being EVA, stuff has a little bit of elasticity to it. So, if you watch, you want to get on the starting point. You don't want to stretch it out too much, because then you're going to kind of screw up the compound materials, the material's natural state, and it won't wear quite as well or be quite as firm as what we want it to be. Okay, so voila, we've got that right there. This is medial rear foot wedge, lateral forefoot wedge. The medial rear foot wedge, we're working with about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters of a taper. So after we get this on and modified, we're going to take her over to the grinder. And because it's a two-step, I like to make sure we have this finished properly before we add that metatarsal pad on here. Now, one thing I like to note, which I say all the time, is Chiappetta Shoes is the world's greatest custom orthotic manufacturer. We take a lot of pride in taking an incremental approach to doing all of this type of work. A lot of times, you do too much right away, it's gonna screw somebody's foot up. So when we do this kind of work, we do best. All right, take you over to the grinder. Now, I'm going to, use this. All right. So right now we're going to square off the addition in a straight 90 from the top. That's the starting point that we're trying to capture and shape this modification. You gotta be careful that you're not taking any of the core orthotic off. And when you're grinding, I like to call it a wheelman. When you're grinding, it's not really about the pressure, it's about patience, all right? So, letting the machine do the work for you. You push hard, it doesn't necessarily mean that the material is going to get ground away quicker. All right, now when we do the first front part and dial it back, we want that heel to be elevated at touch. All right, 4-foot wedge, tapering the outside nicely. The feather the ridges, but leave a majority of it. So when I do this, I like to take down just a little bit of the toe area to not take up too much space in the toe box. Now, one of my favorite wheels is this sketch spray wheel here. Almost. And we're going to do one little extra modification at the finish point. So I got lefty done, now we're working on righty here. Yeah, being a good wheelman, it's all about patience. You know, there's a lot of people that make custom orthotics. Hanger Laboratory being probably the largest employer of this profession. There's still very few people that are craftsmen when it comes to custom orthotics. And there's a lot of science that goes into this, but it is a lot of art. Taking your time and patience. When you're grinding, using your underhand to gauge the pressure, super important. All right, almost done. So when we do this kind of work, we try to keep it under a half an hour for modifications. But we have the customers wait in the shop. Okay, we're back at the table. So we got tapered, feathered really nicely. You got a really fine balance of how this is working from the heel. Typically, a medial wedge, you want to start it a little bit more laterally. Lateral wedges, which I don't like, you start straight at the center line of the heel. Medial wedges, you start a little bit beyond that to the lateral aspect. 4-foot wedge, we have that taper to touch in the toe, feathered through here. Now, last step, we are going to add a T4 met pad. For the T4 met pad, I am using a 3mm cushion cork, which is one of my go-tos for the bottom aspect of the orthotic. This customer hasn't been in for a long time, so I didn't scold her, but she had the knee replacements and she wanted to wait a little bit. She probably could have came in right away just to get a checkup, but what are you gonna do? So, with the T4 Met pads, this is the middle of the foot. So if you use something that's too soft, a lot of times we'll use SR Porin if we want to be gentle about a metatarsal support. But SR Porin pads oftentimes compress. SR Porin is usually a red or a gray material. That stuff will compress about 50% within 3 to 6 months. So you got to replace those every 6 to 9 months on an average. They're nice for being gentle when we talk about adding a modification, but when we talk about the center of the foot, especially for a flat foot, because there's a lot of medial inward pressure on the heel and ankle, lateral twisting, abduction of the toes spreading to the outside. So again, what we're doing here is we're trying to guide the foot more down the center line, walk off that big toe more properly, and you know, get her some more comfort, help those knees out. The knee replacements did really well. I think she had it done locally, and the docs here in town, we got some good people over at Comprehensive Orthopedic, big fans of them. They do excellent work, and we work with Comprehensive Orthopedic a lot. There's a lot of great doctors in Racine and Illinois too. We're always happy to help and work with people, especially when it comes to these kind of custom modifications. You know, when you talk about foot doctors, chiropractors, nobody's hands-on with this type of stuff. So we have a lot of experience both with the materials, the shapes, how things interact inside of the shoe, and you have to be hands-on with this stuff to really understand how the materials function. You can have a general idea of durometer and that type of stuff, but to have a full appreciation, you know, there's very few shops like us that are this hands-on with modification work. When we sell orthotics, we charge $450. We're not a part of any insurance network, so it's out of pocket. We don't charge for modifications. I'd argue I'm not charging enough, but you know, it's a lot of money to ask people when we're selling something that takes about 2 to 2.5 weeks to make, and they pay for it up front and they get to wait. Now, it's usually a good wait because we'll make some big changes for people's lives. All right, we're gonna take her to the grinder. We're gonna be set for today, so 2 seconds. Okay, so one last note. I mentioned earlier, she's got a dropped navicular. That's the bone right here, middle of the foot. And when we have a lot of pronation, that's an area where it can get a lot of friction and pressure. So what we did from the bottom is notch this out. Now I'm going down to the base cork. That's going to give a little depression zone for that bone to sit. If that continues, we can take it down even more and fill it in with an SR Porin. That's a really good modification, maybe for another workshop live. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later. Make sure you check us out. than Chiappetta. Ciao.